Video game tax avoidance news today. Now, major video game companies are no strangers to the practice of weaseling out of paying as much tax as possible. As I've pointed out several times before, Activision Blizzard gets away with paying no tax at all in the US and actually gets a tax refund despite this because it takes advantage of loopholes in the US and Holland. And a little while ago, we talked about how Rockstar is able to get itself £42 million in tax relief in the UK. Well, we're going to talk about that tax relief again because a number of major corporations have taken advantage of the UK's tax relief efforts, despite many of them not being British companies and despite the tax relief being designed for smaller studios. Aside from Rockstar, WarnerMedia, Sony and Sega have managed to avoid paying millions and millions of pounds, tens of millions of pounds in fact, in corporation tax, exploiting the UK's video games tax relief policy. According to a report in The Guardian, Sega has claimed up to £20 million in relief, Sony has claimed nearly £30 million, and WarnerMedia, a company as scummy as any Activision or EA, has claimed up to £60 million. Now, in general, the video game tax relief policy is good. It does help smaller studios recoup some of their costs. Certain production costs can be relieved by up to 20%. But if smaller companies are able to benefit from it, you bet your ass that major multinational corporations are always ready to claim an even bigger piece of the pie. Being designed to promote Britain's interests as well as benefit game developers, the video game tax relief policy focuses on, or is supposed to focus on, culturally British games, ones that in particular struggle to find financing. In practice, however, the standards for application are so lax that pretty much any multinational corporation can join in and avoid tax. That's what it is for some of them, it's tax avoidance. Just having your game feature the English language is one of the qualifications for application. The companies benefiting from almost half of all VGTR relief are not predominantly based in the UK, and there's only 4 of them. That's 4 companies benefiting from almost half of all relief. As The Guardian writes, official figures show VGTR was also overwhelmingly more lucrative for larger scale video game projects. Claims for more than £500,000 have taken at least 80% of the total tax relief, despite accounting for only a small fraction of claims. These were dominated by big developers. While claims for big budget games will be larger due to higher costs, smaller, low-budget developers have received much less of the pot. Applications for less than £50,000, while accounting for more than half of successful claims, were granted just roughly £10 million of the total £324 million in tax reductions. Separately, and you're all gonna love this, the total cost to the taxpayer has ballooned to more than £100 million a year, almost 3 times higher than original government estimates. Basically, as you all pay more, a handful of major corporations are saving more. Whenever you see journos, critics, pundits, whatever, defend major companies and say, well, they need all these microtransactions, they need all this monetization, they never seem to consider the added context of situations where these companies are saving money in some fairly shady ways. The context of many of these major companies avoiding paying what they owe. In some cases, such as Activision's case, actively making money off of the taxpayer, paying nothing itself and yet somehow getting a refund on the fuck all it pays. Why should I have any sympathy for Activision's financial situation when it's able to get away with bullshit like that? We need to keep in mind that the video game industry makes billions of dollars and saves millions in tax avoidance. More money than any of us could reasonably picture, conceive, even really understand. Once we start getting into millions, let alone billions, that sheer volume of cash, that amount of cash that none of us will ever see, is borderline abstract. And yet I'm supposed to believe that because video games never raise their price beyond $60, that all of their monetization efforts are acceptable. Never mind the fact that $60 has just become a starter price, never mind the fact that millions and billions are being made off of really predatory monetization schemes. Never mind the fact that these massive corporations are not paying taxes. Certainly not paying the amount they should. Alex Dunnigan of TaxWatch UK says that the video game tax relief policy has become a cash cow for large tax-dodging multinational corporations who are milking the system to extract hundreds of millions of pounds in subsidies from the British taxpayer. It is clear to me that much of the subsidy is unnecessary, as many of these corporations were producing hugely popular games since long before the introduction of VGTR. And that is indeed true. The VGTR was implemented in 2014, and I do believe Sega had a couple hits before then. As we noted last time, in addition to raking in £42 million in tax relief, Rockstar paid nothing in the UK. Very much like with Activision in the US, the common taxpayer is simply just handing cash over to these giant companies. Some people complain about their tax money going to the poor. Oh, well, why should I pay for someone who is on welfare? Why should I pay for someone who needs financial help? And if they're that upset about people who actually need help, I wish they'd be just as upset, if not more upset, about the fact that their money subsidizes companies, giant fuck-off companies, that definitely don't need the help. I don't really give a fuck that the amount I pay in tax, and I do pay a fair bit, goes in part to people who need financial aid. In fact, I should hope it does. But I do have a real problem with the fact that Bobby Kotick, the CEO of Activision, a man with a net worth of $7 billion, heads up a company that has illegally conned its way into paying fuck all, and essentially makes money off my back whether I buy their games or not. If you pay tax, if you're watching this and you pay tax, you are paying more than many multi-billion-dollar corporations. You simply are. That's worth getting mad about. WarnerMedia and Sega declined to comment on the story because, of course, I mean, why should they? They feel no need to respond to any of this. Sony didn't respond to a request for comment at all because they fucking know they can just sit back, keep letting the cash roll in, and essentially no one's going to do anything to stop them. They operate in an economic system that is designed entirely for them and their comfort. They know they can't defend the ethics of any of it, but they also know they don't have to. And as always, stories like this are just worth keeping in mind when people trip over themselves to defend the actions of these multi-billion-dollar companies. They don't just make tons of cash, they avoid paying tons of cash as well.